This episode of the Sports Box is brought to you by Mic'd Up Entertainment and DJ Mike Velarde. For all of your event planning needs, make sure you contact Mike at 609-864-5925 and tell him that you saw him on the Sports Box.
And we're live on the air. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this show that's better than Barnum and Bailey Circus. Oh, shit, they shut down. Anyway, hey.
Are we shutting down?
We're not shutting down anytime soon. This is the Sports Box, but the only opinion that matters. It's right here, baby. I am Mike Galetta, a.k.a. Hamilton Mike, along with my partner, Brian, the Ranger of Tart. Brian, how the hell are you?
You couldn't make a circus throw those frisbees. I'll tell you
No,
that.
I gotta get something heavier to throw. That frisbee shit's pissing me off. Anyway, it's my Xanax is kicking in too. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Here we go. We're going to the NFC East, baby. We're staying close by, up to the north to talk about those New York Giants, the G-Men. And who better to talk about the Giants, Brian, than our affiliate in the New York Giants affiliate area, Tony Tannucilli Jr. Tony, what's going on, pal?
Hey, good afternoon, guys. Season's fast approaching.
That's right. Always
Smell it in the air.
Always good to talk football, so why not talk G-Men? Brian, start me. Let's talk New York Giants.
New York Giants, 11-5 last year, good enough for second in the NFC East.
Yep.
They were the wild card, though they had better record than a couple teams that had a couple home
They
games.
did.
That's a flaw in the system. Anyway, they had to go up to Lambeau, ended up losing that game to Green Bay in the wild card round. Offensively, down year for the team as a whole. They had the 29th ranked rushing offense, 17th through the air, average out to 25th. Eli Manning, touch over 4,000 yards, 26 TDs, 16 picks. The running game, as you can imagine, when you're 29th out of 32 teams, wasn't very good.
Nope.
Rashad Jennings led the way with close to 600 yards, 3 touchdowns. The Giants only had 6 total rushing touchdowns all year. Not that great. But what was great was Odell Beckham Jr., as you knew he would be. 101 catches, 1,367 yards, 10 touchdowns. Sterling Shepard as a rookie, 8 touchdowns himself. So
Yep.
not bad numbers there. Defensively, they were fantastic. They were the 10th overall defense in the league, 3rd against the run, 23rd against the pass, but again, in a division where you have some throwing quarterbacks, maybe it's not entirely, inaccurate. And Landon Collins led the team in tackles.
Yep.
In the draft, they went with Evan Engram, tight end out of Ole Miss, 23rd, to give Eli another passing weapon. But,
Yeah.
Tony, I feel like we're doing the preview from last year because I'm going to mention to you that the Giants' rushing offense isn't really that good. And you're going to agree with me because it's the same as it was last year. They didn't really address it.
Yep.
Didn't address the offensive line. They didn't really have any big free agent signing either. What is your thought about this team coming into the year with kind of the same rushing game they had at the end of last year, which wasn't that great?
Well, yeah, I think, even if you were later on in the show to ask about the keys to the season, I think the number one key is the offensive line, and if they can run the ball. Giants have a lot of weapons, through the air, adding Marshall and Engram, but, they're bringing back the same cast of characters on the offensive line, and, the talk the last 2 months is that Flowers has gotten himself in better shape, and he seems to be more dedicated, and this is a big year for him. The Giants do a pretty good job with the line of protecting Manning. He consistently, was one of the leaders in not getting sacked. But what you saw last year is, even though he wasn't getting sacked, he had to get rid of the ball maybe quicker than he wanted to. And then also, you saw in the running game. Whether it was Rashad Jennings or it was Darkwa, or at the end of the season they started using Perkins. It was the same story. You hated as a Giant fan to see 3rd and 2 on the opposing team's, say, 40-yard line because you knew they were going to pass. They weren't getting those 2 yards on the ground, and I don't see where that's coming yet this year.
Yeah, you talk about the running attack. It's going to be a little bit of a mystery who's going to be the lead back besides Paul Perkins in there. Shifted Shane Doreen in there, and you talk about Darkwa. But the wide receiver core I think is interesting as well. You got Odell Beckham, who obviously is stud, going to be the main receiver. You brought in Brandon Marshall, who I think doesn't stretch the field as much as people think anymore. I think he's going to be an absolute stud possession receiver. But you got the emergence of Sterling Shepard that you saw it last year. This kid's going to turn some heads this year.
Shepard, coming out of Oklahoma last year, I thought that was a great pick. He had a very good rookie season. What everybody seems to remember is the couple of drop passes in the Green Bay game, and I know they interviewed him the other day, and he said that weighed on him a lot over the off season. And listen, the guy's got a lot of skills, and I think you're looking for him to take the next step. But the question is, with all the weapons the Giants have to throw the ball to, will his statistics be better? That's the thing. I mean, he may be a better player, but, there's going to be a lot of guys that want the ball this year. So we'll see.
Yeah. You look at what the Giants did in the draft. Now, I kind of find it pretty interesting. So we talked about the fact that their passing defense wasn't good. They passed on Gary and Conley. Now, obviously, there were some issues going around with him. Didn't know what you had there. It is what it is. They didn't really do anything to address the offensive line, at least not early on. They actually had a defensive tackle in the second round. So tell me what you think about Evan Engram. Now, he was a tight end that was taken over some guys who people thought, not O.J. Howard, but over like David Njoku, for example. Engram wasn't necessarily a guy that was supposed to go where he went. What are your thoughts on giving Eli a tight end that they probably really haven't had since really Shockey, frankly? I mean, a guy that can really catch the ball inside.
He's got some good size, though. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Here's my thinking on it. I wasn't, too high on him going into the draft. I really wouldn't say I knew a lot about him. But I think the reason I think the Giants drafted him is because of his size and his speed and getting down the field. The one thing, I would say, was like, I was, as a Giant fan, saying, all right, maybe this works, is because the one guy the Giants signed before the draft was that, tight end from the Vikings, Red Ellison. That guy seems to be more of a blocking tight end, and, I know already in camp the Giants have lined him up at fullback as well. So I think with Ellison signing, the Giants thinking might have been like, okay, we've got our blocking tight end, so let's go get another weapon that can move the ball down the field, and we can line him up in different spots, whether he's in the natural tight end position or they, move him down the line if he's in the slot. I mean, he's a big guy, so he's going to create some matchup issues, and it just gives Eli, as you guys all know, some of his balls sail a little, so another tall target to go along with Marshall. So right now, I think I'm kind of positive on it. Anxious to see him get on the field and see what he can do.
Well, they sail a bit because he's running for his life, trying to get the ball out of his hands because there's no offensive line, and they know they're passing because there's no running game. So before one last thing on the draft, are you surprised that Dalvin Cook didn't get a look there at 23, given the fact that a lot of people had him potentially going higher, ended up going in the mid-second round to Minnesota, but was he somebody who was on your personal radar that you were kind of surprised they weren't even really looking at that spot?
I'll put it to you this way. Yes, watching the draft as it came to the Giants pick, I was watching it with my son, and, his first thing was when they got down to maybe 2 picks before the Giants pick, he said, Dad, you think they're going to take Cook? And I said, listen, the guy's fantastic, but I said, too many potential issues off the field. I think the Giants are going to stay away from him. I said, I don't think they're going to take him. With the offensive line the way it is, I said, no. I said, I don't think they're going to take him.
I think a lot of people got scared with the shoulder issues he had too coming out of college, but I think it would have been a good pick. But anyway, good news for the Giants. Jason Pierre-Paul didn't blow any more of his hands off after 4th of July weekend, so that's a good thing. You talk about this defense though with the Giants. You talk about Devin Kennard. Jenkins, you got Rogers Cromartie back there. I mean, his defense is, on paper, really, really solid. Do you think they did enough in the offseason with this defense, kind of almost staying pat, and going to go into the season again as the firepower that they had last year?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you 2 reasons. I think they replaced the tackle position with the number 2 pick out of Alabama. I think that guy's going to eventually do well. The teams, the Giants always have that tackle spot where they get a guy for 3 years and then he runs out of his rookie contract. They let him go, and they draft another guy that kind of fits right in. So I think he'll be good. I think the middle linebacker position, the kid Goodson, they drafted out of Clemson the year before. They've kind of had him earmarked to be the middle linebacker, and so far so good. And I think the other key to the Giants' defense is the return of last year's third-round pick, Darian Thompson, who they lost, I think, after week 2 last year. They really liked him. He seems to be healthy, and I think, he'll be a great addition if he stays healthy to the defense. I think the Giants' defense, you rattled off some stats before, but one of them that you didn't mention was that they were number 2 in points allowed, average points allowed per game. And I think that was, even though they gave up more yards, through the air, they're pass defense wasn't great. I think you're going to see an improvement in their defense. I mean, and they're going to need it with the schedule they got to play this year. But no, I think standing pat with the one guy, Thompson, coming back from injury, and Goodson, maybe taking that role as the middle linebacker, I think they'll be okay. I think, those two additions will be good.
And just a quick side note, I'm sure, Tony, you weren't losing sleep over. They had Eldrick Rosas in camp as a kicker. They did sign Mike Nugent, so just relax. They're going to be good at kicker now. They have Mike Nugent now, so I just want to ease yourself.
I heard that today, and I really couldn't quite understand why there wasn't another kicker in camp to begin with.
Well, Eldrick Rosas.
Just give this young guy a shot.
I mean, Eldrick Rosas, come on. Eldrick Rosas, come on. I mean, you got to get somebody else there.
What I think is one of the bigger free agent signings of any team this year is Brandon Marshall.
Yep.
And I say that because I think he's going to give Eli that possession receiver they really haven't had. You talk about that 3rd and 2 from the 40. Marshall's the kind of guy who can catch a 4-yard pass. I mean, Beckham's, that's not really his thing.
No.
And Shepard, again, he's a second-year player. So to me, you look at the Giants' set of receivers. If they're not the best in the NFC, they're sure among the best groups.
Yep.
And in a division where, the Cowboys have Des Bryant, the Eagles went and signed a bunch of guys, and really there's influx in Washington. That's clearly the best set of receivers in the NFC East, and really, outside of maybe Green Bay, that's probably the best set in the conference. I think that Marshall in the short passing game, with Evan Engram, might be the replacement for that running game. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think Marshall, over his career, he's always been the number one guy everywhere. And, him getting, teaming up with Odell, I think everybody's focus still will be on Beckham.
Yep.
And that's going to free him up on a lot of one-on-one situations. And with his height and his size and his experience, absolutely. But, listen, I'm a guy, about your guy's age, and, I grew up with Power Giant football. And, I'd love nothing more than to see the Giants in a 3rd and 2 late in the game where, hand the ball to somebody who's going to grind it out and get that first down. Listen, the NFL today is different than it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what you're saying, Marshall, Engram, on 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, I'm sure they can go to it. But you know what? Still part of me says, gotta have that running game.
Yep.
So you look at the schedule, Tony, and the schedule makers obviously didn't do them any favors. They have a tough schedule, which they probably should. Probably one of the top 10 in the league. They open up at Dallas, come home for Detroit, at Philadelphia. I think, believe it or not, I think one of them is going to be a split this year with Philadelphia. Then they go to Tampa Bay, which they'll probably lose that game by a lot. And then they're home against the Chargers, which, Chargers coming west, that should be a win for them. But there's usually a murderer's row we always see in the schedule, and I think it comes early in the season, starting October 1st at Tampa Bay. They beat the Chargers, but then they go to Denver and home against Seattle for then the bye week. Do you see any part of the schedule that you're really concerned about? I mean, they do play Oakland later in the year, too, which is going to be a tough game. But do you see any really...
You know what? Yeah, I mean, listen, I think, everybody in the division, 14 of their 16 games are the same. So Dallas, Philly, and Washington all got to basically run through the same schedule that we do.
Yep.
But, when you look at playing the NFC West, I think you got 3 solid teams. I mean, the AFC West.
Yep.
You got 3 solid teams out there. The Giants got to make other trips to the West Coast. They got to go to Arizona. They got to go to San Francisco.
Yep.
The schedule is very tough. There's a lot of long road trips.
Yep. Second to last of the year, they play Arizona, which isn't a good place to play either. So.
No, and they'll bounce back this year, from last year. I think they'll be a better team. I mean, that's why I think the key to the Giants, winning some of these West Coast games is the way their defense plays.
Yeah.
They'll keep them in the game. It's a tough schedule. I mean, for the Giants to go 11-5 again, if they were to go 11-5, they may have a better season, but it's going to be tough to get 11 wins next year. This coming season.
Yeah. And what's in their favor, I think, Tony, here is that they have a couple of teams who you'd much rather play at home on the road in Seattle and Kansas City. So they're not having to go travel to these really hard places to play.
Yeah.
They luck out a little bit in that they're getting these teams at MetLife versus having to go across to Seattle
Especially
or
Kansas
go to
City.
Kansas City. Those are hard places to get wins.
Yep.
Where I think that the crux of the schedule is is, I mean, you have that little bit of a lull after the bye. I mean, those are games against the Rams and Niners. You can chalk them up as wins right now. There's no way they're going to lose those games. But they come into 4 games out of those 2 games. Kansas City is not it's not a gimme. I mean, it's at home, so it's not a gimme. They go at Washington, cross country to Oakland, then they host the Cowboys, who they're probably going to beat in week 1. They usually split. So it's interesting. I think the crux of the schedule's right there. Anything from your thoughts? I mean, what kind of stands out to you as far as, I guess, the way it's laid out?
Well, I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not looking at the schedule, but don't the Giants have a stretch where they got 3 home games in a row again? Where something built around the bye, where there's a few home games? So,
3 out of 4 home games if you include the bye week. In week 5, they host LA, the Chargers. Then they go to Denver, host Seattle, bye week, and they host the Rams. So 3 out of 4 games at home, and really they're going to have 3 weeks just hanging out in the area because the bye week's there as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that, you made a great point about some of the home games they get. Seattle and Kansas City are tough places to play, and getting them at home is a big key. Listen, speaking of Kansas City, I know everybody's talking Raiders, but I think Kansas City's just going to be just as tough as the Raiders.
Flying under the radar every year.
Every year.
They got a lot of ingredients to be a successful team, and I think, listen, I really think. You get any NFC team that can get the first team to 10 wins, I think is going to win the division, because 11 is going to be tough to get this year. There's going to be no 13-3 NFC champion this year.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah, I would agree.
So I guess we'll put you on the spot here. Again, it is a tough schedule, but it's a schedule that's pretty much shared by the other teams.
Yep.
They were 11-5 last year. They had the wild card, but they had a better record than really the teams that. I'm pretty sure they had a better record than Green Bay. I have to go to Green Bay, obviously, because of the division.
Yeah.
How do you think this plays out? Number 1, how many games do you think they win? And number 2, is this a playoff team this year?
Well, I'll start with your second part first. Yes, I think it's a playoff team. But I will say the 3 keys to this being a playoff team, the offensive line is 1, which kind of leads into the running game. They can be somewhat successful, even if they finish 20th in the league in rushing, because the Giants did win a Super Bowl a few years ago with a bottom 5 rushing team. And the third thing, and it goes with everybody else, is being healthy. Eli goes down, Beckham goes down, JPP goes down, Collins goes down. You throw everything out the window. I think right now, Giant fans may not want to hear it, but I think 10-6 is a realistic prediction. If they stay healthy and they show a good running game, they can win 11 games. I think they're going to be right up there, with a chance to win the division going into December. I kind of completely count the Redskins out. I don't think Dallas will be as good as last year, and I think the Eagles will be a little bit better than last year. So I think all 3 of those teams got a shot.
I think the Eagles have a tougher schedule, though, so that kind of balances out with them being better. I think they stay kind of where they are. I think 10 wins could win a division. It could tie for the division. I think you're going to have to get to 11, I think. But, I think 10 could win a division.
I think coming into the year, obviously we'll talk about my Cowboys at some point in the future. For me, though, I agree with you entirely. I think this is the Giants' division to lose. I love what they did offensively. Even if I have some concerns with their offensive line and their running game,
defense is scary.
They have a set of targets. You include that tight end in Engram that I think rivals the best in the conference. I think it's going to be they're going to cause a lot of defensive problems.
Yeah.
And they're going to be one of those teams where they're going to throw it and you still can't stop it. And I think it's up to Eli. I mean, Eli has that, woe is me. Sometimes he looks like he's somewhat disinterested out there, frankly. But you know what? You can't argue with the results. They probably have. They definitely have the most seasoned quarterback in the division who's been there and done that. He might also be the oldest, but that's fine. He's got rings on his fingers.
Yep.
No worries there.
Yep.
In my opinion, as a Cowboys fan, I think it's a Giants division to lose.
Absolutely. So that's all the time we have for the Giants, episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and we want to thank our man Tony Tannucilli Jr. for getting online and giving us a little G-Men update. Tony, thank you very much, my friend.
All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your summer, and hopefully we'll talk once the season gets rolling.
There you go. And anything happens at Giants camp or anything comes interesting with the Giants, we'll get Tony back on the line, and Tony will give us the scoop, correct?
Yes, sir.
Attaboy. So yeah, it's just guys come on.
Guys, thanks for having me.
Only winner.
Absolutely, Tony. Absolutely. Remember, you can always get us on social media if you need to.
Absolutely. Again, we're previewing every NFL team this year. Make sure that you're following us on Twitter and Facebook at Sportsbox Show, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you know when your team comes up, you get a nice little alert. Hey, I can watch a Sportsbox.
Where do you get this much friendly G-men talk? It's unbelievable. With a Dallas fan next to me.
Listen, I'm as real as it gets.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, thank you for watching, and remember, at the Sportsbox, the only opinion that matters is absolutely right here. See you. 1, 2, 3.
Don't forget to subscribe.